We live in a world that praises perfect outcomes, perfect bodies, perfect routines, perfect success. Yet perfection is often an illusion, a shimmering mirage that shifts the moment we reach for it, making us question why we chase something that continuously slips beyond our grasp. From childhood, many of us are taught that mistakes are signs of weakness rather than natural steps in learning, and this belief quietly shapes the way we approach challenges throughout our lives. We start to equate performance with worth, assuming that excellence requires flawlessness, even though reality shows us again and again that perfection is never as absolute as it appears. As we grow older, we realize that the standards we chase are often built from comparisons, whether from media, peers, or our own imagined expectations. And these comparisons create invisible chains that keep us constantly evaluating ourselves. The more we look outward for validation, the more disconnected we become from our internal sense of value, which is far more fluid, complex, and authentic than any external measurement can capture. The world encourages us to present our smoothest surfaces, hiding the cracks and uncertainties that make us human. Yet those very cracks hold the stories that shape our identity. Instead of acknowledging that growth is messy, we spend energy polishing our image until even we can no longer discern what is real and what is simply performance. The chase for perfection becomes exhausting, not because we lack discipline, but because the pursuit itself is fundamentally endless. Each time we reach a milestone, the bar moves higher, convincing us that satisfaction must be delayed until the next achievement, and the cycle repeats endlessly. The hidden irony is that the more we strive for perfection, the more flaws we begin to notice, not because they multiply, but because our attention becomes sharply attuned to identifying what is wrong rather than appreciating what is right. This constant self-surveillance feeds insecurity, making even small imperfections feel like monumental failures. The weight of this pressure can quietly erode our sense of joy, replacing curiosity with fear and creativity with caution. Rather than taking risks or exploring unfamiliar paths, we choose the comfort of predictability, even when it limits our potential. This internal chase mirrors a cultural pattern in which the value of a person is often measured by output, efficiency, and refinement. But this framework fails to recognize the depth and nuance of a human experience. The pressure to be perfect encourages us to hide our vulnerabilities. Yet vulnerability is often the birthplace of connection, innovation, and emotional honesty. When we deny our flaws, we deny opportunities to understand ourselves more deeply, to see where we've been, and to discover what we truly want. The world's obsession with perfection can lead us to believe that our imperfections diminish us, but in reality, they are reflections of lived experience, quietly chronicling our struggles, triumphs, and evolution. The expectation to maintain a flawless exterior can create a subtle tension in daily life, pushing us to continuously edit our words, behaviors, and emotions until authenticity becomes something we reserve for private moments. Even then, we may judge ourselves harshly, as if honesty about our limitations somehow makes us unworthy. Over time, this tension can create a sense of internal fragmentation, where the person we show to the world and the person we truly are begin to drift apart. It is in this space of quiet conflict that many people start to question whether perfection is actually worth the pursuit. They begin to notice how striving for an unattainable ideal drains energy, joy, and presence from their lives, replacing these experiences with anxiety and comparison. When we slow down enough to reflect, we may realize that perfection is often a story we have inherited rather than consciously chosen. A narrative passed down through families, institutions, and media without examination. Once we recognize this, we can start to dismantle the belief that perfection is the pinnacle of human achievement. Instead, we can see it as a distraction from deeper fulfillment, a shiny surface that masks the richness found beneath. The pressure to perform flawlessly can create a kind of internal tunnel vision, narrowing our ability to appreciate the broader landscape of who we are and what we are capable of becoming. When we spend too much time chasing a polished version of ourselves, we risk losing connection to the messy, beautiful truth that growth is rarely linear and never without error. Every perceived flaw contains information about our desires, our fears, and our resilience. Yet we often ignore these signals in favor of maintaining an image that feels safe, but ultimately limits our understanding of ourselves. If we took the time to explore these imperfections instead of hiding them, we might discover that they reveal strengths we never recognized, such as adaptability, creativity, or emotional depth. Many people assume that perfection leads to acceptance, but genuine acceptance cannot flourish unless it is rooted in authenticity. And authenticity requires us to acknowledge our imperfections without shame. The more we allow ourselves to be real, the more we free ourselves from the exhausting pressure of constantly appearing composed. This shift does not happen overnight, but it begins the moment we question whether the pursuit of perfection is truly aligned with our well-being or whether it is simply a habit formed from years of external demands. By reflecting on this question, we open a door to a new way of understanding ourselves, one that values truth over polish and depth over appearance. In this space of reflection, we begin to see that the imperfections we have been trained to hide may be the very qualities that make us relatable, grounded, and whole. Wabi-Sabi is a Japanese philosophy rooted in seeing beauty in the imperfect, incomplete, and impermanent. It's not about fixing things, it's about appreciating them as they are. In a world that urges us to constantly upgrade, refine, and perfect, Wabi-Sabi invites us to pause and notice the quiet elegance in the ordinary. Instead of rushing past subtle details, it teaches us to slow down and observe how time shapes everything we encounter. It encourages acceptance over judgment, presence over pressure, and curiosity over control. By shifting our focus this way, we begin to recognize overlooked moments of grace. This philosophy grew from ancient Japanese aesthetics that valued natural materials, organic forms, and the gentle transformation that comes with age. Wooden surfaces darken, paper yellows, metal tarnishes, and these changes are not seen as deterioration, but as evidence of life unfolding. Wabi-Sabi reveals that nothing stays pristine forever, yet each stage of existence carries its own charm. When we embrace this truth, we free ourselves from unrealistic expectations that demand permanence or flawless preservation. Instead of resisting the inevitable passage of time, we learn to coexist with it, finding calm in its rhythm. In daily life, Wabi-Sabi encourages us to view our surroundings with a softer gaze. A chipped bowl becomes a reminder of shared meals, a faded photograph recalls a cherished memory. A wrinkled shirt tells a story of movement and living. These objects become companions rather than decor, and their wear connects them to our experiences. Rather than discarding something because it no longer appears perfect, Wabi-Sabi nudges us toward appreciation. This perspective helps us understand that beauty does not always present itself in sleek lines or flawless finishes. Sometimes it hides in subtle textures and humble imperfections. The philosophy extends beyond objects and environments. It also influences how we relate to ourselves. Many people feel pressure to perform, achieve, and present an idealized version of who they are. Wabi-Sabi offers a counterweight to that pressure by encouraging gentleness toward our own flaws and limitations. It suggests that our imperfections do not detract from our worth, but deepen our authenticity. When we accept that we, too, are incomplete and ever-changing, we create space to grow without fear. This self-acceptance becomes a quiet form of freedom that softens the harshness of self-criticism. Wabi-Sabi also shapes how we relate to others by reminding us that people are not machines designed for precision or predictability. We all carry scars, uncertainties, and contradictions that make us human. Recognizing this helps us approach relationships with compassion rather than control. Instead of expecting others to meet impossible standards, we begin to appreciate who they are in each moment. This shift fosters deeper connections, because acceptance creates an atmosphere where honesty feels safe. Wabi-Sabi encourages us to value sincerity over perfection, knowing that genuine presence nurtures bonds far more enduring than curated appearances. The influence of Wabi-Sabi can also be felt in creative work. artists, writers, and makers who accept imperfections often discover new forms of expression that emerge precisely because they are not forcing perfection. A stray brushstroke, an uneven line, or an unexpected color blend can reveal a direction that would never have appeared under rigid control. Creativity thrives in spaces where accidents are welcomed as possibilities rather than mistakes. By embracing unpredictability, Wabi-Sabi cultivates an environment where exploration becomes more important than outcome, and where the creative process itself becomes a source of meaning. This philosophy also teaches us to appreciate silence and emptiness, which are often overlooked in a culture that prizes constant stimulation. Wabi-Sabi honors quiet spaces because they allow thoughts to settle and emotions to breathe. A pause between tasks, a moment of stillness at dawn, or the soft hush after rain can become restorative when we approach them with awareness. These moments remind us that beauty does not always arrive with spectacle. Sometimes it manifests in subtle atmospheres that soothe the senses. Wabi-Sabi helps us recognize that simplicity can be profoundly nourishing when we allow ourselves to experience it. In embracing impermanence, Wabi-Sabi also changes our relationship with loss. When we understand that change is an inherent part of existence, transitions feel less like disruptions and more like continuations of a natural cycle. This perspective does not eliminate grief, but it helps us hold it with tenderness rather than fear. Impermanence teaches us to cherish moments without clinging to them, knowing that their fleeting nature is part of their beauty. By learning to let go gracefully, we cultivate resilience and openness to new experiences, trusting that each phase of life has its own quiet significance. Applying Wabi-Sabi to modern routines can be surprisingly grounding. Instead of striving for a perfectly organized home, we can create spaces that feel lived in and welcoming. Instead of expecting productivity every day, we can honor cycles of rest and renewal. Instead of forcing every plan to unfold smoothly, we can adapt gracefully when circumstances shift. This balanced approach reduces the stress of constant optimization, reminding us that life is not a performance, but a journey shaped by both intention and unpredictability. When we embrace this balance, we open ourselves to deeper satisfaction in everyday living. Ultimately, Wabi-Sabi invites us to redefine beauty by expanding our awareness of what truly matters. It encourages us to find meaning in the ordinary, to celebrate the marks of time, and to approach ourselves and others with gentle acceptance. Through this lens, flaws become features, change becomes opportunity, and incompleteness becomes a natural expression of being alive. By appreciating things as they are, we discover a quieter, more enduring form of happiness, one that does not depend on perfection but on presence. In this way, Wabi-Sabi becomes not just an aesthetic, but a way of seeing the world with gratitude and grace. At the heart of Wabi-Sabi lies simplicity, not minimalism for aesthetic reasons, but simplicity born from authenticity, keeping only what feels meaningful and real. Such simplicity begins with awareness, a gentle noticing of how much we tend to accumulate in our surroundings and within our minds. We gather objects, commitments, and expectations until our inner and outer spaces feel crowded, yet we rarely pause to ask whether these additions truly serve us. Wabi-Sabi simplicity encourages us to release what no longer aligns with our values, not through force or rigid rules, but through honest reflection. When we practice this mindful approach, we begin to understand that simplicity is not an aesthetic trend, but a form of clarity. It allows us to see ourselves more clearly, to sense what brings comfort and what creates weight. In a world driven by consumption and constant comparison, embracing simplicity becomes an act of rebellion against the idea that more is always better. It reminds us that meaning is often found not in abundance, but in intentional presence. Choosing simplicity does not require abandoning material things or living in stark emptiness. Instead, it invites us to cultivate environments that reflect who we are and what we value. A single cherished object, worn yet treasured, can offer more warmth than a room filled with unused possessions. This perspective extends to our emotional lives as well, guiding us to let go of narratives that complicate our sense of self. We hold on to fears, insecurities, and outdated beliefs because they feel familiar, yet they crowd our emotional space just as excess belongings crowd our homes. Through Wabi-Sabi simplicity, we learn to gently release these internal burdens, acknowledging their presence, but not allowing them to define us. As we clear this internal clutter, we make room for peace, curiosity, and deeper connection. This shift allows us to experience life with greater openness, noticing subtleties that were previously hidden behind mental noise. The practice of simplicity also teaches us to appreciate the quiet beauty of humble moments. A cup of tea enjoyed without distraction, a brief pause before speaking, or a slow walk without destination can become profound when approached with presence. These moments remind us that richness often lies in what appears small. When we embrace simplicity, we begin to value experiences over possessions, depth over quantity, and sincerity over perfection. It encourages us to choose what is essential rather than what is expected. This applies to relationships as well. Authentic connections flourish when we remove the complexities of pretense and allow ourselves to show up genuinely. Simplicity creates space for truth, enabling conversations that feel grounding rather than performative. It invites us to listen fully, without planning responses or projecting assumptions. In this spaciousness, relationships become more nourishing, rooted in mutual presence rather than emotional clutter. Wabi-Sabi simplicity also touches how we approach time. Modern life urges us to fill every moment with tasks, productivity, and stimulation. Yet this constant motion leaves little room for rest or reflection. Simplicity encourages us to slow down, to let time unfold naturally, allowing ourselves to breathe between responsibilities. When we honor these pauses, we discover that stillness can be just as valuable as action. It is in these quiet spaces that insight emerges, guiding us toward decisions that reflect our true values. By resisting the urge to overschedule, we rediscover the rhythm of our own pace. This rhythm becomes an anchor in a world that moves quickly, offering a sense of stability even during uncertainty. Simplicity is also a practice of trust, trusting that we do not need constant complexity to feel fulfilled. It reassures us that life does not have to be perfect to be meaningful. As we embrace this trust, we stop grasping for control and allow experiences to unfold naturally. This openness leads to greater resilience, as we are less shaken by unexpected changes when we are not clinging to rigid expectations. Furthermore, simplicity brings a sense of gratitude. When we reduce distractions, we notice the beauty in things we once overlooked. The softness of morning light, the texture of a handmade object, the calm of a clean, quiet room. These details become sources of grounding that remind us of the quiet abundance already present in our lives. Wabi-Sabi teaches us that simplicity is not deprivation, but appreciation, a way of seeing more by owning less. It does not demand that we withdraw from the world, but that we engage with it more intentionally. In this intentionality, we discover that what remains after letting go is not emptiness, but clarity. This clarity allows us to live with a sense of ease, knowing that the things we choose to keep, both physically and emotionally, are aligned with who we are. Simplicity ultimately offers the gift of freedom, the freedom to move lightly, to think clearly, and to experience life without unnecessary weight. As we embrace this freedom, we deepen our connection to ourselves and the world, finding beauty not in complexity, but in the quiet truth of what genuinely matters. Simplicity, then, becomes a lifelong practice, one that evolves as we evolve. It teaches us to return to ourselves when the world feels overwhelming, offering a pathway back to balance. By consistently choosing what aligns with our values, we create a life that feels coherent rather than chaotic. This coherence nurtures inner peace, allowing us to move through the world with intention instead of distraction. Simplicity reminds us that fulfillment arises not from possessing everything, but from appreciating what we already have. When we embrace this mindset, we begin to see that even the smallest moments can hold immense meaning when experienced fully. In this way, simplicity becomes a quiet form of wisdom, guiding us gently toward a life that feels both grounded and expansive. It is a reminder that life's richness appears when we make space for stillness and allow moments to unfold naturally, without rushing or forcing. Through this openness, simplicity becomes a presence that reveals beauty in its most honest form. Imperfections are stories. A chipped mug, worn shoes, or a weathered bench hold memories and history. In the same way, people carry stories in their flaws. These marks of use and experience create a tapestry of moments that form identity, revealing how every person has endured, adapted, and evolved over time. When we look closely at the objects we keep, we often discover that the ones with the most wear are the ones we feel closest to, not because they are flawless, but because they remind us of where we have been and who we were during the moments they accompanied us. A scratch table might evoke the memory of a family gathering. A scuffed pair of shoes might recall a journey filled with uncertainty and courage. And a faded postcard might capture the warmth of a connection that once shaped us. These imperfections do not diminish the value of the object. They deepen it. In the same way, the scars, mistakes, and awkward chapters of our lives add depth to our personal narratives, even when we wish they didn't exist. Many people try to hide their imperfections, fearing judgment or misunderstanding. But doing so often hides the very experiences that shape their strength. When we acknowledge the marks life has left on us, we also acknowledge the resilience that allowed us to move through difficult times. Rather than viewing flaws as proof of inadequacy, we can begin to see them as evidence of growth. A person who has stumbled has learned to stand again. A person who has cracked open emotionally has expanded their capacity for empathy. And a person who has faced loss has discovered the fragile, precious nature of connection. Imperfections also make us relatable. When we encounter someone who speaks openly about their struggles, we often feel more comfortable sharing our own stories. This mutual openness creates bonds that are more authentic than anything built on polished surfaces or curated perfection. A flawless facade may attract admiration, but vulnerability draws connection. Just as weathered objects carry the imprint of time, people carry the imprint of their experiences, and acknowledging these imprints allows us to build deeper relationships. The beauty of imperfections becomes even clearer when we consider how they reveal truth. They show who we really are, not who we pretend to be. A person who embraces their imperfections demonstrates a kind of quiet courage, because accepting our flaws means accepting the unpredictable and sometimes painful paths that shaped us. Instead of striving tirelessly to erase or hide these marks, Wabi-Sabi encourages us to honor them. This shift in perspective helps us see that flaws do not mean brokenness, they mean humanity. The more we try to present ourselves as spotless, the more we distance ourselves from genuine joy, because joy often arises from spontaneity, vulnerability, and connection, all of which require imperfection. When we attempt to polish our lives too much, we strip away the texture that makes living meaningful. Imagine a perfectly smooth stone. Beautiful, yes, but lacking the marks that tell a story of movement, impact, and transformation. In contrast, a rough, irregular stone reveals a journey. People are much the same. Our imperfections chart our growth, offering a map of the terrain we have crossed. They reveal the lessons we learned only through challenge, the strength we discovered only through struggle, and the compassion we cultivated only by knowing our own wounds. Understanding imperfections in this way can change how we approach mistakes. Instead of seeing errors as failures, we can view them as part of the crafting process of our character. The mistakes we make often teach us more than our successes do, because they force us to pause, reflect, and adjust. They carve wisdom into us the way time carves patterns into a well-used tool. This does not mean glorifying pain or seeking hardship, but rather honoring the resilience that emerges from facing life honestly. Flaws also encourage us to let go of the fantasy of control. They remind us that life cannot always be scripted or perfected, and that unpredictability is part of being human. Accepting this truth frees us from the exhausting pursuit of perfection and allows us to experience life with greater openness and ease. When we stop fearing imperfections, we also stop fearing authenticity. We begin showing up as ourselves rather than as an image constructed to meet imagined expectations. And in doing so, we invite others to be real as well. Over time, embracing imperfections becomes a practice of compassion, both for ourselves and for others. It softens the harsh judgment we sometimes direct inward and opens our hearts to the stories carried by the people around us. Every flaw, every scar, and every misstep becomes a reminder that life is a continuous unfolding rather than a polished performance. Imperfections become bridges, not barriers. In embracing the stories etched into our lives, we learn to appreciate the resilience that flaws reveal, recognizing that the marks we carry are not symbols of failure, but signs that we have lived fully, felt deeply, and continued forward even when circumstances challenged us. And through this understanding we come to see that imperfection is not something to hide, but something that connects us to one another in a meaningful human way. Kintsugi highlights the philosophy beautifully: broken pottery repaired with gold, making the cracks the most beautiful part. The damage becomes the value, not the downfall, and this striking reversal shows how beauty can emerge from honest restoration rather than disguise. In Kintsugi, the break is never hidden or smoothed away. Instead, it becomes the centerpiece, glowing with a quiet dignity that speaks to the passage of time and the inevitability of change. This approach challenges the modern instinct to discard what is damaged or to mask any sign of weakness, reminding us instead that transformation often begins at the point of fracture. When an object breaks, its story does not end, it simply shifts into a new chapter. And the artist's choice to mend those broken pieces with gold elevates the damage into a symbol of continuity. The repaired piece becomes more than it was before, infused with both history and rebirth, and this duality captures the healing power hidden within imperfection. Just as pottery gains new identity through kintsugi, people too evolve through the moments that crack their sense of certainty. Emotional breaks, disappointments, and failures all leave marks inside us. And though we may wish we could erase them, they shape our resilience and deepen our understanding of life. Kintsugi teaches that healing does not require pretending the wound never existed. Instead, it asks us to acknowledge it, honor it, and integrate it into who we are. When we allow our emotional cracks to show, when we speak honestly about our challenges, when we forgive ourselves for missteps, we create gold-filled lines within our own identity. These lines may not shimmer visibly, but they radiate through the way we speak, listen, and connect with others. They become markers of empathy, compassion, and openness, qualities that often emerge only through lived experience. In this sense, the practice of kintsugi becomes a metaphor for embracing vulnerability. Rather than striving for a version of ourselves untouched by hardship, we can learn to appreciate the beauty that emerges when we mend gently and deliberately. The process of repair becomes an opportunity to reconsider what we value. A relationship that breaks and later heals may grow stronger because the fracture prompted deeper honesty. A personal failure may lead to a new understanding of one's strengths. A moment of heartbreak may open the door to a richer appreciation of love. These gold-filled seams of experience do not erase the pain. They shine because of it. Kintsugi also teaches patience, because the repair process is slow and requires presence, intention, and care. Nothing is rushed. The artisan must sit with the broken pieces, study their shapes, and understand how they once fit together before beginning the transformation. In our own lives, healing often demands the same patience. We cannot force ourselves to snap back instantly after a setback, nor can we pretend that everything is fine before we are ready. True healing requires space, reflection, and tenderness. When we allow ourselves this process, we create the possibility of emerging stronger and more luminous than before. The philosophy of kintsugi also encourages us to rethink our relationship with fragility. Many people fear breaking, believing that fragility is a weakness to be avoided at all costs. But fragility is not the opposite of strength. It is simply part of being alive. Every meaningful bond, every bold pursuit, every dream carries the possibility of fracture. Kintsugi shows us that breakage does not have to be an ending. It can be an invitation to transform. This mindset helps lessen the fear of failure, because even when something falls apart, there is still potential for beauty. By embracing the idea that cracks can be mended with intention and care, we free ourselves from the impossible expectation of living flawlessly. Instead, we live courageously, knowing that even if something breaks, it can still continue in a new and meaningful form. Kintsugi also expands our understanding of value. In many modern cultures, value is associated with perfection, novelty, and precision. A scratch on a new object lowers its worth. A mistake on a record becomes a flaw. Kintsugi defies this logic, teaching that value can increase precisely because of damage. The repaired object becomes one of a kind, irreplaceable, and enriched by its history. When we apply this perspective to ourselves, our relationship with our past softens. We begin to see how every challenge we have faced has shaped us into who we are today. The moments we once felt ashamed of become integral threads in our personal tapestry. Instead of seeing ourselves as diminished by our experiences, we begin to recognize the depth and richness they add to our character. This shift in perception helps cultivate self-compassion, an essential ingredient in emotional healing. It allows us to look inward without harshness, acknowledging our own humanity with gentleness rather than judgment. Ultimately, Kintsugi offers a powerful reminder. Healing is not about returning to who we were before the break. It is about embracing who we have become because of it. The gold-filled cracks are not a disguise, but a celebration, a testament to endurance, transformation, and the quiet beauty of resilience. Through this lens, we can learn to view our own fractured moments not as evidence of failure, but as opportunities to grow into a fuller, more authentic version of ourselves. Wabi-Sabi teaches self-compassion. Our insecurities, mistakes, and weaknesses do not diminish us. They shape us. Embracing them makes us more real, more human, and more connected to the truth of our lived experience. When we accept our imperfections, we create space for understanding rather than criticism, and this shift opens the door to deeper emotional resilience. Self-compassion allows us to recognize that mistakes are not signs of failure, but evidence that we are learning, experimenting, and daring to exist fully in a world that often expects flawlessness. Through Wabi-Sabi, we learn to view our missteps with gentleness, acknowledging that every moment of struggle carries the potential to reveal undiscovered strengths. Instead of hiding our vulnerabilities, we begin to see them as pathways toward growth, moments that teach us who we are and what truly matters. This approach softens the inner voice that demands perfection and replaces it with one that encourages honesty and patience. When we treat ourselves with the same compassion we offer others, we begin to heal the unseen cracks within our hearts. These cracks, much like the golden seams of Kintsugi, are not marks of shame, but reflections of lived stories that shape our identity. Wabi-Sabi reminds us that wholeness does not require perfection. It requires acceptance. The more we accept our imperfections, the more we cultivate emotional freedom, freeing ourselves from the pressure to constantly measure up to external standards. This freedom allows us to explore our lives with curiosity rather than fear, inviting creativity, authenticity, and spontaneity into our daily choices. Self-compassion encourages us to release the heavy expectations that make us believe we must always perform flawlessly. It teaches us that rest is necessary, that slowing down is valuable, and that being gentle with ourselves is not a weakness, but a form of quiet strength. Through this lens, we begin to appreciate the delicate balance between striving for improvement and honoring the natural pace of our personal evolution. Wabi-Sabi encourages us to embrace the fact that growth is rarely linear. It unfolds in unexpected ways through setbacks, revelations, and moments of clarity that appear when we least expect them. By allowing ourselves to be imperfect, we create space for genuine transformation. This transformation does not happen overnight. It emerges slowly, shaped by reflection, patience, and the courage to keep moving forward even when progress feels invisible. When we extend compassion to ourselves, we quiet the internal storm that often erupts when we feel inadequate. In its place, we nurture a calm inner environment where understanding can flourish. From this place of calm, we can acknowledge the parts of ourselves we once tried to ignore, the insecurities, fears, and regrets that seem too heavy to face. Instead of pushing them away, we learn to sit with them gently, giving them room to breathe. In doing so, we discover that these parts of ourselves are not threats, but invitations to grow closer to our true nature. Self-compassion allows us to recognize our shared humanity. Everyone experiences doubt, fear, and imperfection, even if their outer appearance seems polished. When we remember this, we feel less alone in our struggles. This connection helps dissolve the illusion that we must stand apart from our flaws in order to be worthy. Wabi-Sabi teaches that our worth exists inherently, not because we are flawless, but because we are human. Being human means being unfinished, ever-changing, and shaped by every experience we encounter. When we approach ourselves with compassion, we allow healing to take root. This healing strengthens our ability to face future challenges with grace, knowing that even if we falter, we have the capacity to rise again. With each small act of self-kindness, we reinforce the belief that we deserve understanding, patience, and care. Over time, these acts accumulate, forming a foundation of inner stability. This foundation supports us through life's uncertainties, providing comfort when external circumstances feel overwhelming. Wabi-Sabi teaches us that embracing imperfection means embracing life as it is, messy, unpredictable, and filled with moments of both joy and sorrow. Through self-compassion, we learn to navigate these moments with tenderness, trusting that our imperfections are not obstacles, but guides. They point us toward the areas where we most need understanding, nudging us to care for ourselves more deeply. As we continue to practice self-compassion, we develop emotional strength grounded not in rigidity, but in flexibility. We become more adaptable, more forgiving, and more open to change. This openness allows us to engage with the world authentically, without the need to hide behind perfection. In embracing our flaws, we step into a fuller, richer version of ourselves, one that honors the beauty of being imperfectly human. Through this ongoing practice, we begin to shift our relationship with our inner world. We start recognizing moments of self-criticism more quickly, meeting them with curiosity instead of harshness. This shift does not eliminate difficult emotions, but it transforms how we experience them. Rather than feeling overwhelmed, we learn to observe our feelings with compassion, allowing them to pass naturally. This gentle approach creates a sense of emotional spaciousness, giving us room to breathe even during challenging times. As we grow more comfortable with our flaws, we begin to trust ourselves more deeply. This trust becomes a guiding force, helping us make choices that align with our values instead of external expectations. When we trust ourselves, we move through life with greater confidence, knowing that mistakes no longer define us. Instead, they serve as stepping stones that reveal new possibilities. Over time, this mindset helps us cultivate a more grounded and resilient sense of self. We learn that true strength comes not from perfection, but from vulnerability embraced with courage. In this way, Wabi-Sabi becomes more than a philosophy. It becomes a lived practice, woven into the fabric of our daily thoughts and actions. It teaches us to appreciate the quiet beauty of becoming, reminding us that every imperfect step forward is part of our unfolding story. Each day offers another chance to embrace ourselves with compassion and grace. Perfection demands speed and control, but Wabi-Sabi encourages presence, offering a softer, slower way of moving through the world. When we slow down, we invite awareness into ordinary moments, and this awareness helps us recognize the quiet beauty we often overlook in our rush to achieve and accomplish. Slowing down is not laziness, but intention, a deliberate choice to engage with life rather than sprint past it. In a culture that equates speed with success, embracing slowness becomes an act of rebellion, a way of reclaiming agency over our time and attention. When we move too quickly, details blur together, and the subtle textures of life disappear beneath the pressure to always be productive. But when we slow our pace even slightly, we begin to notice the gentle rhythms that shape our days, the warmth of sunlight on a table, the sound of leaves shifting in the wind, the softness of a familiar voice. These quiet details do not announce themselves loudly. They reveal their beauty only to those willing to pause long enough to observe them. Wabi-Sabi teaches that presence is not found in grand accomplishments, but in the subtle, imperfect moments that fill our ordinary days. When we embrace presence, we begin to understand that life is not meant to be outrun, but experienced, savored, and felt with all of our senses. Slowing down helps us reconnect with our inner world, giving us space to listen to our thoughts, emotions, and intuitions without the noise of constant urgency. In this quiet space, clarity often emerges, revealing truths we might have missed while rushing from one task to the next. The beauty of Wabi-Sabi lies in its invitation to experience life with openness, allowing each moment to unfold naturally rather than forcing it into predetermined expectations. Presence encourages us to breathe more fully, listen more deeply, and see more honestly, creating a sense of groundedness that does not depend on perfection or performance. When we practice moving slowly, we learn to appreciate the transitions between moments, the spaces where silence gathers and meaning settles. These pauses, often dismissed as unproductive, become opportunities to reconnect with ourselves and observe life with clearer eyes. Slowing down also helps us break free from the constant comparison that fuels perfectionism, because presence draws our focus inward rather than outward. Instead of measuring ourselves against others, we begin to measure our experiences by depth, connection, and authenticity. This shift creates room for gratitude, allowing us to appreciate small joys that would have gone unnoticed at a faster pace. As we slow down, our relationships also deepen because presence allows us to listen without distraction, respond with intention, and connect in ways that feel nurturing and sincere. People feel seen when we give them our full attention, and this simple act becomes a form of beauty that technology and speed often disrupt. In this sense, presence fosters intimacy, not just with others, but with ourselves, helping us honor our emotions, needs, and desires. Wabi-Sabi invites us to notice the way light falls across a room, the way shadows shift during the day, and the quiet transformations happening around us that reveal the passage of time. By paying attention to these subtle changes, we develop a deeper appreciation for impermanence, recognizing that beauty often appears briefly before dissolving into something new. This awareness encourages us to value experiences while they are happening rather than delaying gratitude for some future achievement. Presence becomes a daily practice, a way of grounding ourselves in the reality of now, instead of getting lost in the noise of tomorrow. When we learn to slow down, we discover that life has always had beauty woven into it. We simply needed to move at a pace that allowed us to see it clearly. Every moment becomes an opportunity to reconnect with the natural pace of living, a rhythm that breathes in gentle cycles rather than frantic bursts. By embracing this rhythm, we begin to release the belief that speed equals value, understanding instead that depth, presence, and intention create far more meaningful experiences. The world around us softens when we move with awareness, and our minds become calmer as we stop chasing an ideal of perfection that was never meant to define our worth. Through this slow, attentive way of living, we nurture a sense of peace that does not depend on external circumstances, but on the simple act of being present. Wabi-Sabi reminds us that when we allow ourselves to slow down, we return to the essence of our humanity, curious, observant, and capable of finding beauty in even the smallest moments. As we continue to practice presence, everyday experiences become more vibrant, whether we are sipping tea, walking along a familiar path, or simply sitting quietly with our thoughts. The world feels richer not because it changes, but because we become awake to it, tuned into its textures, colors, and rhythms. This awakening fosters gratitude, reminding us that even mundane routines hold moments of quiet magic when approached with a calm and present mind. With each breath, each step, and each pause, we deepen our relationship with life, creating space for appreciation, connection, and inner harmony. In choosing presence over speed, we reclaim the parts of ourselves lost to exhaustion and urgency, allowing our minds and bodies to realign with a pace that supports well-being. Gradually, we begin to trust that slowing down does not hinder progress. Instead, it enhances it by giving us the clarity and energy needed to move forward with intention. In this way, Wabi-Sabi transforms the act of slowing down into a powerful practice, one that enriches our inner lives and helps us see beauty woven into every fleeting moment. When we honor the present, we honor ourselves, and in doing so we cultivate a life shaped not by pressure, but by meaning, not by striving, but by genuine appreciation for the world unfolding around us. Through presence, we learn to walk gently, breathe deeply, and greet each day with awareness. Life is unpredictable. Wabi-Sabi reminds us to accept the natural flow. Things change, fade, and evolve. Letting go of control can open space for peace, a type of peace that arises not from mastering every circumstance, but from understanding that uncertainty is part of existence. We often cling to plans, routines, and outcomes, believing that structure alone can shield us from disappointment, but life resists such rigid control. Storms arise, relationships shift, and unexpected challenges appear, reminding us that the world moves according to rhythms beyond our command. Wabi-Sabi teaches that rather than fighting these currents, we benefit from flowing with them, noticing the lessons embedded in change rather than resisting what feels uncomfortable. This philosophy encourages a gentle acceptance that does not mean passivity. It means recognizing where our influence ends and choosing how to respond with grace. When we surrender to life's impermanence, we discover freedom, a liberation from the constant tension between expectation and reality. By letting go of the illusion of control, we allow ourselves to be fully present, to witness each moment as it is, rather than filtering experiences through worry or projection. The act of surrendering cultivates humility, reminding us that no one is exempt from life's unpredictability, and that the wisdom of acceptance often outweighs the temporary satisfaction of dominance or perfection. In this space, we can observe how even seemingly negative events carry gifts, lessons, growth, or unexpected perspectives that might have remained hidden if everything had unfolded exactly according to plan. Wabi-Sabi also invites us to reflect on our resistance to impermanence. We often feel discomfort when things fade, decay, or end because we equate permanence with security. Yet permanence is a myth. The very essence of life is change, and learning to accept it nurtures resilience. The acceptance of impermanence does not diminish our ability to care, dream, or act. It strengthens it by allowing us to participate fully without being paralyzed by fear of loss or failure. Letting go of control also deepens our appreciation of what we have, because when we acknowledge that everything is temporary, each moment gains significance. We begin to notice the subtle shifts in relationships, the fleeting beauty of nature, the passing seasons, and the quiet details of our everyday lives. These observations cultivate gratitude and presence, creating a life that feels richer and more aligned with reality. Wabi-Sabi encourages us to embrace uncertainty as an integral part of existence, not as a flaw to be corrected. Just as objects in nature weather and change, so too do our circumstances and experiences, and there is elegance in this ongoing transformation. The cracks and shifts we encounter are not failures. They are indicators that life is active, alive, and unfolding. By viewing change as a natural rhythm, we cultivate patience and a gentler approach to ourselves and others. Life's unpredictability also offers opportunities for creativity and innovation. When outcomes are uncertain, we are invited to explore alternative paths, adapt, and discover new potentials. Control may provide safety, but it can also limit our imagination, while surrender opens space for experimentation, growth, and authentic expression. By accepting that we cannot direct every detail, we reclaim energy previously spent resisting reality and redirect it toward engagement with what is truly meaningful. Wabi-Sabi's perspective on impermanence extends to relationships as well. People grow, change, and sometimes drift apart, and accepting this flow can prevent unnecessary suffering. By releasing rigid expectations of permanence, we create space for connection that is authentic, dynamic, and compassionate. Relationships are not diminished by change. Instead, they gain depth as we witness evolution, adapt, and cherish moments without clinging to fixed ideals. Similarly, accepting unpredictability fosters emotional resilience. When we understand that setbacks, loss, or discomfort are part of the natural order, we respond with flexibility rather than panic. We learn to navigate life's ebbs and flows without being overwhelmed, recognizing that even difficult experiences contribute to our overall growth. Wabi-Sabi encourages reflection on how impermanence shapes our personal identity. The self is not static. We are constantly evolving, influenced by experiences, relationships, and the passage of time. Letting go of the notion of a fixed identity allows us to embrace who we are in each moment, accepting that growth includes both achievements and missteps. By releasing the pressure to maintain a perfectly controlled persona, we foster authenticity and openness, enabling deeper connection with others and ourselves. Observing impermanence in the natural world offers profound insight. Leaves wither and fall, rivers change course, seasons shift, and these cycles continue without pause. By aligning our perception with these natural rhythms, we gain perspective on the transient nature of our own challenges and joys. This awareness encourages a harmonious approach to life, emphasizing balance, patience, and reverence for the present. Letting go of control also nurtures mindfulness. When we stop clinging to rigid outcomes, our attention settles into the present, where life is actually happening. Mindfulness and acceptance become intertwined practices, allowing us to engage fully, listen deeply, and respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. This mindful presence reveals the beauty hidden within ordinary experiences, from the warmth of sunlight to the laughter of a friend, emphasizing that richness in life is not found in domination or certainty, but in awareness and receptivity. Wabi-Sabi further highlights that letting go of control is not synonymous with weakness. It requires courage to face uncertainty without retreat, to allow life's flow to guide us without losing sight of our values. This courage fosters trust in ourselves, trust in the process, and trust in the natural unfolding of events. When we cultivate trust, we reduce anxiety and increase our capacity for resilience, adaptability, and contentment. Accepting unpredictability also influences how we perceive mistakes and failure. Instead of viewing them as catastrophic disruptions, we can understand them as natural elements in a dynamic world. Each misstep becomes a lesson, an opportunity for insight, and a step toward personal evolution. By relinquishing the need for control, we allow these lessons to emerge naturally, guiding us toward growth without unnecessary struggle. Ultimately, Wabi-Sabi teaches that peace emerges not from forcing stability, but from flowing with life's impermanence. By embracing unpredictability, we cultivate a life grounded in authenticity, presence, and gratitude. We learn to cherish moments without clinging, to navigate challenges with grace, and to honor the ongoing, ever-changing journey of existence. In letting go of control, we open ourselves to a deeper understanding of life, discovering that beauty, meaning, and fulfillment often arise from the very unpredictability we once feared. Through this perspective, we develop resilience, patience, and a profound appreciation for the fleeting yet precious nature of every experience, finding balance in the harmony between acceptance and action, between surrender and intentional engagement with the world around us. A crooked smile, a handmade object, morning light on a messy desk. Small details become extraordinary when viewed through the lens of Wabi-Sabi. These ordinary elements, often overlooked in the rush of daily life, reveal a quiet beauty when we take the time to notice them, appreciating imperfection and transience as essential parts of their charm. A crooked smile tells a story of lived experience, of joy mingled with hesitation, of authenticity unpolished by social expectation, and its uniqueness reminds us that human expression cannot be replicated or perfected. A handmade object, with uneven edges or subtle asymmetry, carries the touch of the person who created it, the careful attention, and the inevitable small errors that reveal the human hand behind the work. In these small inconsistencies, we find depth and character, a reminder that life's true texture lies in the details rather than in flawless replication. Morning light spilling across a messy desk illuminates more than just physical objects. It captures the passage of time, the quiet rhythms of daily life, and the intimate connection between our environments and our inner worlds. In noticing these details, Wabi-Sabi teaches us to slow down and engage our senses fully, appreciating subtle shifts in color, texture, and form that are often ignored in the pursuit of perfection. The philosophy invites us to see beauty in decay and wear in objects and moments that carry the marks of use, time, and impermanence. A faded page of a beloved book, a frayed edge on a well-worn sweater, or the gentle patina on a wooden chair all tell stories of life unfolding and the inevitability of change, encouraging us to value authenticity over polish. These observations extend beyond objects to human experience, reminding us that imperfection is intrinsic to our nature and that our flaws contribute to the richness of our character. By training our attention toward these small, often overlooked details, we cultivate mindfulness, which strengthens our ability to find satisfaction and meaning in the present moment. Wabi-Sabi encourages us to embrace irregularity, asymmetry, and incompleteness, seeing them not as defects, but as evidence of vitality, history, and personal narrative. When we allow ourselves to engage with life in this way, we begin to notice beauty in places previously dismissed or ignored, such as the uneven texture of a wall, the scattering of leaves on the ground, or the subtle creases in a friend's hand as they gesture while speaking. Each observation becomes a meditation on transience, imperfection, and the passage of time, reinforcing the connection between what we perceive externally and the state of our internal awareness. In human relationships, noticing these small, imperfect details fosters empathy and intimacy. A friend's nervous laugh, a loved one's idiosyncratic habits, or the gentle quiver of emotion in their voice carries depth and authenticity, revealing their humanity in ways that idealized versions of ourselves or others cannot. Wabi-Sabi invites us to see these nuances not as irritations or flaws, but as unique expressions of character, fostering patience and acceptance in our interactions. By shifting our focus from flawlessness to authenticity, we enhance our capacity for meaningful connection, recognizing that the imperfections we encounter in others mirror our own, and that mutual acceptance deepens trust and intimacy. These small observations also extend to our personal growth, revealing the ways in which our own experiences, habits, and tendencies carry subtle lessons. Noticing our repeated patterns, our minor lapses, or the quirks of our thinking can offer insight into our values, preferences, and areas for reflection without judgment. Through this lens, we learn to cultivate self-awareness and self-compassion simultaneously, appreciating that the very irregularities we once criticized are integral to our ongoing development and identity. Wabi-Sabi also teaches us to find beauty in transience, emphasizing that moments, objects, and experiences are fleeting, and their impermanence is part of what makes them precious. A flower wilting on a windowsill, steam rising from a cup of tea, or the gradual fading of colors in the sky at dusk each illustrate how temporality contributes to significance. By engaging fully with these transient moments, we cultivate gratitude, attentiveness, and a sense of humility, acknowledging that life's value resides not in permanence, but in the lived experience of each passing second. This awareness also fosters acceptance of change and loss, as we come to understand that the natural cycle of emergence, growth, decline, and transformation is not only inevitable, but essential to the beauty and vitality of life. In embracing the extraordinary in the ordinary, Wabi-Sabi encourages creative engagement with the world, inviting us to explore, experiment, and notice patterns, textures, and forms that might otherwise escape our attention. Artists, writers, and thinkers who practice this attentiveness often discover inspiration in the smallest details, a shadow cast across a wall, the irregular line of ink on a page, the subtle aroma of a brewed beverage, and use these observations to generate works imbued with authenticity, depth, and emotional resonance. Beyond artistic practice, this approach cultivates a way of life in which routine activities, cooking, cleaning, walking, or conversing, become opportunities for mindfulness and aesthetic appreciation. As we attune to the delicate, imperfect details in our surroundings, we develop a sense of intimacy with our environment, recognizing the interconnectedness of all elements and the unique stories each holds. This heightened perception encourages us to treat objects and experiences with care, to preserve their character rather than erase their marks of life, and to approach interactions with thoughtfulness and presence. Over time, the consistent practice of noticing and appreciating the small details fosters resilience, contentment, and a more grounded perspective, as we learn to derive satisfaction from what exists rather than from what we believe should exist. The ordinary, when viewed with attention and reverence, becomes extraordinary, reminding us that life's richness lies in subtleties often overlooked in the pursuit of perfection, grandeur, or uniformity. By seeing the value in irregularity, impermanence, and modesty, we cultivate a more compassionate, patient, and perceptive mindset, both toward ourselves and toward the world around us. This perspective allows us to slow down, savor moments, and find joy in textures, sounds, colors, and experiences that might otherwise escape notice. Wabi-Sabi's focus on these small, imperfect details fosters an awareness that life is not a series of milestones to be achieved, but a series of moments to be observed, felt, and appreciated in their authenticity. Through this lens, we learn to perceive not only beauty, but also meaning, recognizing that the interplay of imperfection, transience, and personal narrative creates a tapestry of experience that is uniquely rich and profoundly human. In embracing the extraordinary in the ordinary, we cultivate mindfulness, gratitude, and a deeper connection to the fleeting, imperfect, and authentic dimensions of life, realizing that these subtle observations offer a path to serenity, creativity, and fulfillment. The conclusion ties everything together, embracing your flaws, appreciating imperfection, and finding meaning in the present moment. The Wabi-Sabi life is not perfect, but it is deeply beautiful, offering a perspective that transforms the ordinary into something rich, meaningful, and alive. By embracing our flaws, we allow ourselves to see beyond the superficial pressures of perfection that dominate modern life, and instead cultivate a sense of authenticity rooted in self-acceptance. Every crack, every misstep, and every irregularity becomes part of our story, a testimony to growth, resilience, and a lived experience that cannot be manufactured or imitated. In recognizing the beauty inherent in imperfection, we shift our attention from what is lacking to what is present, from judgment to appreciation, and from anxiety to serenity. This shift is not a one-time decision, but a continuous practice, requiring mindfulness, reflection, and gentle courage to face ourselves honestly. Through Wabi-Sabi, we come to understand that life's value is not measured by flawless appearances, polished achievements, or constant control, but by the depth of experience, the authenticity of relationships, and the presence we bring to each passing moment. Appreciating imperfection extends to the world around us, allowing us to notice the subtle textures, irregular forms, and transient beauty that would otherwise go unnoticed. A weathered fence, the shifting light across a room, the uneven surface of a handmade object, all become reminders that imperfection carries its own elegance, history, and significance. In this way, Wabi-Sabi transforms perception, helping us see richness where we once saw flaw and encouraging a gentler, more appreciative engagement with life. Letting go of the need to control every outcome fosters a sense of freedom and peace, as we accept that unpredictability is inherent to existence, and that change, decay, and transformation are natural processes rather than failures. Through this acceptance, we cultivate resilience and flexibility, learning to respond to life with grace rather than resistance. Presence becomes the cornerstone of a Wabi-Sabi life, as slowing down, observing carefully, and engaging fully with the moment allows us to find meaning in the everyday. A crooked smile, a faded photograph, or the quiet murmur of morning light all carry stories and significance when we attend to them with openness and attention. This mindful appreciation of the ordinary nurtures gratitude and reinforces the understanding that beauty is not only in grand accomplishments or pristine appearances, but in the subtle, fleeting, and authentic details of existence. Wabi-Sabi also teaches the value of self-compassion, encouraging us to approach our mistakes, insecurities, and weaknesses with understanding rather than criticism. By doing so, we cultivate emotional balance and strengthen our connection to ourselves, recognizing that our imperfections are not limitations, but pathways to insight, empathy, and personal growth. Accepting our own humanity allows us to extend compassion to others, fostering relationships rooted in authenticity and mutual respect rather than expectation or performance. In this framework, flaws become bridges rather than barriers, linking us to one another through shared vulnerability and the recognition that all people carry stories marked by imperfection, change, and resilience. Kintsugi, as a metaphor, encapsulates this philosophy perfectly. Just as broken pottery can be repaired with gold to highlight rather than hide its cracks, our personal histories, mistakes, and emotional fractures can be integrated into our identity to create something uniquely beautiful and strong. Rather than seeking to erase or conceal what is imperfect, we honor it, allowing our experiences to enrich our character and deepen our understanding of life. Wabi-Sabi emphasizes the richness of simplicity, reminding us that a life cluttered with excess, material possessions, unrealistic expectations, or rigid routines can obscure the beauty and meaning that exist in the present. By simplifying, we create space to notice, appreciate, and engage fully with the elements of life that matter most. Simplicity does not mean deprivation. It means intentionality, clarity, and an openness to what is essential, authentic, and meaningful. In recognizing the extraordinary within the ordinary, we discover that life is composed not only of dramatic events, but of countless small, interconnected moments that together form a tapestry of experience. Morning light on a desk, a favorite cup worn with use, the textures of a handmade object, or the imperfections of a loved one's smile, all become touchstones of presence and appreciation. This attentiveness encourages a form of mindfulness that deepens our engagement with reality and enhances our capacity for gratitude, compassion, and joy. Wabi-Sabi also invites us to confront impermanence, understanding that change, decay, and transformation are fundamental aspects of existence. By accepting the fleeting nature of life, we cultivate an ability to let go gracefully, to find contentment in each passing moment, and to appreciate the value of experiences before they fade. This awareness encourages a more fluid relationship with time, allowing us to savor moments as they occur rather than clinging to the illusion of permanence or certainty. Presence, acceptance of imperfection, and awareness of impermanence together create a life that is alive, textured, and deeply human. Wabi-Sabi encourages us to recognize that struggles, mistakes, and vulnerabilities are not setbacks to perfection, but essential components of a meaningful existence. By embracing this perspective, we transform obstacles into opportunities for growth, insight, and connection, and we cultivate a resilience that allows us to navigate life with patience and grace. In relationships, work, and personal endeavors, this approach fosters authenticity, empathy, and collaboration, as we no longer measure value by flawless performance, but by the depth, sincerity, and presence we bring to our interactions. Ultimately, the Wabi-Sabi life celebrates the harmony between imperfection and beauty, transience and richness, vulnerability and strength. It is not a life of grand achievements or perfect appearances, but one of mindful engagement, appreciation, and integration of experiences. By attending to the small details, honoring the marks of time, embracing our flaws, and accepting change, we cultivate a life that is simultaneously humble and profound. In doing so, we find a deeper sense of contentment, purpose, and connection that cannot be attained through perfectionism or control. The philosophy teaches that the present moment, with all its irregularities, imperfections, and fleeting qualities, is itself sufficient meaningful, and beautiful. By living with this awareness, we develop a capacity for gratitude, patience, and joy that transcends external circumstances, allowing us to appreciate life in its fullness as it unfolds. Wabi-Sabi, therefore, is not merely an aesthetic or philosophical concept, but a practical guide to living, a call to slow down, to notice, to accept, and to embrace. It reminds us that flaws are not failings, but features, that impermanence enriches rather than diminishes, and that the ordinary, when approached with attention and care, becomes extraordinary. In integrating these insights into daily life, we cultivate a sense of peace, authenticity, and connection, finding beauty in the present moment and meaning in the lived experience of being human. The Wabi-Sabi life asks us to let go of unattainable ideals, to honor the passage of time, to cherish imperfections, and to approach each day with presence and gratitude, ultimately revealing that the truest form of beauty is not perfection, but authenticity, impermanence, and the quiet grace of simply being.